transitioning from really agile, everyone knows everything, small team, 15, 20 people, growing very fast, to 50, 100 people, how do you make that transition without losing that agility, that dynamism, that stuff that made you successful in the first place?
Yeah, that is a great question and super important to sort of navigating growth. So the techniques that got you to sort of 15 people, and then from 15 to call it sort of 75, right, and then 75 plus, they are completely different techniques. And as founders, you need to sort of recognize that different things happen at each one of those sort of transition points that you need to actively manage. So for instance, when you're about 75, 80 people, what happens, even if you're all in the same space, and this might have happened earlier if you're a distributed team like many European teams are, at 75, 80 people, not everybody knows everybody anymore. It just becomes physically impossible. Your brain does not have that much room for these social relationships. When that happens, your brain will take shortcuts. A shortcut of the form of those people in marketing, right? Because you know there's a group of people that are marketing, you just don't know everybody anymore. Or those customer support people. And when those sentences start getting said in your company, that is the beginnings of potential politics. That's the beginning of wedges. That's the beginning of friction. That's the beginning of all the things that you don't want that you had when you were 15 people. So you need to be aware of that, and you need to engineer your organization and your communication structures as a result. You might need a reorg. You definitely need one-on-ones. You definitely need pass-downs. You definitely need managers who care enough to start explaining and naming people by name in the other teams, in their team meetings, so that you don't lose that, right? But if the CEO doesn't enforce that, which is that the CEO's not doing it at their staff because they never needed to do it before, guess what? Your managers won't do it, and their managers won't do it. And pretty soon you have an organization that looks like the old Microsoft. Have you guys seen the org chart description of, they have like all these classic Silicon Valley companies and their org charts, and Microsoft's was depicted as an org chart where there's guns coming out of every node pointed at all the other nodes in the organization. That's what happens when people don't know everybody by name, right? You stop giving them the benefit of the doubt, you start lumping them together and making categorizations. And so as a founder, you've got to be sensitive to all of these things and just realize you have to reprogram your organization, which is to say its structure, its incentives, its communication paths every time. And when you hit that stage, that planning and that work as a CEO is even more important than your product work. Which is, if you're still deep in product work at that point and you're not seriously thinking about how do I engineer my organization and not my product, then you probably don't have the right complement, we were talking about this earlier, on your executive team, because you haven't been able to sort of let go of the product, and then meanwhile your culture will get out where you don't want it to be.